What's up guys, welcome back to another video. So today I'm going to be diving in depth if you should buy or lease your next car. Now I want to preface this with it really depends on your own situation and what you want and what you're willing to pay. And for all my fellow car enthusiasts out there, I also want to say that I won't be talking about any of the collectible cars that can actually appreciate in value. However, I will mention a couple cars that I think are going to boom the next couple of years, but that's going to be at the end of the video, so stay tuned. If you're watching this video, the odds are that you probably already own a vehicle and love that vehicle.
Bought this new Lamborghini here.
However, that vehicle will not last you your entire life, so you're going to need to watch this to make sure that you make the right decision in your next car purchase. I'm going to jump right into it because there's no really preface that you need to know. So one is buying a car. There's essentially three cars that you can buy, one being brand new right off the lot, the second one being a couple year old car that's like 3 to 5 years old and seeing the bulk of the depreciation, and the third being a little bit older than that 5 years and is seeing the vast majority of the depreciation. Ideally, you want to buy your cars in cash and just outright own them, in my personal opinion. Now, yes, I know that there will be financial advisors in the comment section saying,
well, if you finance your car at a 2% interest rate, you can get 8% in the market and pocket that 6%.
Yes, however, there is other factors to it, and I believe that those factors are just not greater than the actual downsides. A couple of the factors would be the risk factor to it, and the reason why I say that is because the market has been known to go into a bearish market for a long period of time, and if you finance a car for 4 years, well, you can have a bear market for 4 years and basically not go anywhere. And for the headache, I'll just rather pay off the car, own it outright, and do whatever I want with it. However, I'm not discrediting you if you do finance a car, because that is a very viable option as well, especially if you want to free up as much cash flow as possible. So if you do finance a car, essentially what happens is you have to put a down payment on the car and then you finance the rest of the remaining balance. Plans are typically anywhere from 48 to 72 months and rates can range between 2% and 5%. The contract will have its own clauses and stuff like that, but that's going to be highly dependent on what car you're buying and your own personal credit history. And of course, if you buy or finance a car, whichever one, you are going to have to pay that sales tax on top of the actual purchase price, which can be a hefty load if you're sitting in a state that has a high sales tax. This is why you see all those billionaires who have all their hypercars, and a lot of them actually have Montana license plates because they have 0% sales tax and they can save a lot of money. And understand that if you buy a car outright, you are going to be responsible for all the maintenance, all the insurance payments on that car, excise tax, and other fees that might be associated with owning a car. On top of that, if you are financing, you are going to have to pay on actually borrowing that money to then buy the car. However, that's not the worst case in the world, and once it's actually over, you will outright own it. Some of the pros are that you don't have a mileage limit, unlike some of the leases. Leases will actually cap and allocate you a certain amount of miles, and if you go over that, you are going to be paying some fat fees. This could be really good for certain lifestyles. If you like to get away on weekend trips and drive 4 or 5 miles into another state, spend the weekend, well, owning a car sounds a lot more advantageous for that because you're not going to be capped on the miles. If you have kids and have to drive them everywhere constantly, or if you change jobs and then that new job is very driving intensive. Now, this is a little bit of a controversial one, but another pro is you can customize your car. If you want to mod it, if you want to change the exhaust, tune it, anything like that, you have full freedom to do that. And there's no extra charge if you dent it, scratch it, or anything like that. It just kind of stinks that now you have a scratch or a dent in your car. However, you won't actually need to pay hundreds of dollars to the dealership through the lease. And regardless of the reasoning, if you want to move on from that car, sell it, get another one for various reasons, you actually own equity. So when you sell it, all that cash goes back into your pocket. If you outright own it, but if you finance it, once you sell it, you'll actually have to take that, pay off the loan, and then you will be able to keep the remainder. Now, I do want to let you know, if you finance a car, a lot of people get trapped in being upside down in their loan. Being upside down basically means that their car loan is actually a greater amount than the car's value. So essentially what they have to do is pay to sell their car, which is never a great case. However, it's not all sunshine and rainbows because there are some cons to this as well. If you outright own a car, you're going to have to be responsible for all the maintenance, all the oil changes, new tires, new brake pads, everything like that. The dealership will not cover it. However, if you do buy a brand new car off the lot from a dealership, a lot of these cars come with warranties, and some of them actually have maintenance packages, but that's very dependent on individual situations. Another con is that you're going to have to pay the sales tax, which can be thousands of dollars if you are buying an expensive car, and even if you're buying a not so expensive car, it can still be a couple $100 out of pocket. Now, if you are taking the route of buying a car and financing it, well, your payments are going to be higher than a lease. And that's going to make a lot more sense in just a couple of minutes when I explain why. And the one that kills the most amount of people is the massive depreciation on owning a car. Cars typically depreciate anywhere from 30 to 50% in the first 3 to 5 years of ownership, so you're going to basically be losing 30 grand if you buy a $60,000 car in the first 5 years. However, this is not the only option that I'm going to be talking about today, and I want to jump straight into leasing because there's some really good pros to that as well. Well, leasing is really great for the person who wants to have a new car every couple of years and keep it nice and fresh. Leasing is not going to be the option for someone who wants to buy a car once and then drive it till it absolutely dies. In almost every single leasing case, you will get a newer car anywhere from 1 to 3 years old depending upon your dealership. So leasing typically has a fixed term of 24 to 36 months where you will have allocated amount of miles and a monthly payment that you will have to pay throughout that time. The allocated miles are typically anywhere from 12 to 15,000 per year, so it gives you about 1,000 miles per month, which can be a very good option if you are not driving that much and you want to lower your payments to maximize your cash flow. But if you're right on the line and let's say you go over that limit, well, it starts to get really expensive. It can be anywhere from 10 to 30 cents per mile extra, and let me tell you, those can add up really quickly. And to lease a car, you will actually need a pretty decent credit history because they're not going to just loan it out to anyone on the street. So let's jump into the pros of leasing. So the first pro, so advantageous for businesses to lease cars because it is an easy write-off. So if you guys own a business and want to actually own a car through your business, leasing can be a very good option. It's super clean. It's just, this is how much I paid and this is how much I'm going to write off. Unlike if you are owning a car, it is much more messy because you're going to have to write off miles, depreciation, and then if you can claim gas as well. The payment is going to be determined by the depreciation of that timeline, and you are going to have to pay any extra fees. So essentially how a lease works is you are going to be paying for the depreciation of the car while you own it. That can be a good thing though, because that will lower your monthly payment, and then once the lease is actually done, you just bring it back to the dealership and give them their keys. Unlike owning a vehicle, then you have to sell it, bargain with some people, convince them why it's a good car, and that is always a complete mess. The reason why it is so much cheaper is because you're only financing the depreciation on the car, not the entire car as a whole. Maintenance is typically included in the lease contract, so you're not going to have constant out-of-pocket cost every single month, especially if something breaks or you need new tires or something like that. And you're not going to have to come up with a down payment of thousands of dollars when actually getting the car. Leasing does sound pretty sweet because you get a new car every couple of years. You don't have to deal with the headaches of maintenance or the headaches of selling the car, and it's super cheap in comparison to actually buying a car in monthly payments. However, it's not all sunshines and rainbows because there are some cons to leasing as well. Those being that you're not building up any equity in the car, so if the car does depreciate at a lower rate, well, the dealership will actually take advantage of that, not you. At the end of the lease, you will not have a car. Unlike owning a car, if you own a car, you own it outright and you can do whatever you want with it for however long you want. But now with leasing, now you're limited and now you have to go through that entire process again, which can take some time. Now, when you do sign the lease, you should know the residual value of the car. So when you return it, you should know approximately how much the car should be worth. However, sometimes you can get really lucky in a lease to buy option. That is when the car dealership expected the car to depreciate a certain amount. However, it actually held its value a little bit better. So therefore, you can actually buy the car at a reduced price compared to the market value, where you can literally buy it and then flip it and sell it for a couple grand profit. However, it's typically not worth buying the car at the end of the lease. It only really makes sense if you want to buy it and then drive it until it dies. So just a quick wrap up, if you're planning on owning the car for more than 4 years, it's typically more advantageous to buy, regardless if it's new, used, or really used. Do not buy a car if you're going to be the person that wants a new car every 2 to 3 years, and definitely do not be the person who actually buys a new car right off the lot, drives it for 2 years, and then actually decides to sell it. That is the worst case scenario. The reason why is because those people pay the most and actually suffer from the most depreciation. And as I mentioned earlier, if you buy a car, finance it, and then decide to sell it really soon, well, you might be upside down in the car and have to pay to actually sell your car, which is literally paying to get rid of one of your assets. It doesn't make any logical sense. However, you should probably lease it if you don't drive that much and you want a lower car payment, and of course, if you want a new car every couple of years. No hassle of selling the car, no sales tax, and you don't really have to worry about maintenance. There is a couple things that I did leave out, however, I do want to touch upon them. One is being a business aspect, and leasing a nice car might be a very good image to portray if you are going to try to sell whatever you're selling. As an example, you don't want to be a real estate agent who parks your car in front of the new house and it's just a complete beater. You want a nice clean car that actually shows some prestige. However, there are some things that I didn't mention, and if you lease a car, well, it's going to look a lot better for business, because if you're a real estate agent or any aspiring entrepreneur, well, if you have a nice looking car, people are going to take you a lot more serious. The best financial way is to buy a car that's about 4 to 5 years old, that's pre-owned and seen the bulk of the depreciation already. Once you buy that car, just plan on driving it until it absolutely dies. That has historically been the best way to save the most amount of money and actually use a car. I want to highlight that the depreciation curve on different cars is, well, different. So definitely research your specific car and see how the depreciation will affect it. Typically, luxury cars will depreciate really quickly, and smaller cars will depreciate a lot slower. If you're in the privileged spot of owning a weekend or a sports car, I highly suggest owning that one outright and potentially leasing your daily driver. The reason why is because sports cars typically hold their value a lot better. Something like the air-cooled older Porsches have actually outpaced the stock market. So something like that, definitely own it outright and just take care of it. Some cars to stay away from are definitely BMW and Mercedes, top of the line luxury large sedans, as well as any Maserati. Those historically have just been killed by depreciation. There also has been many other cars that have been great investments, but I do want to highlight that a lot of the last version of those cars have historically held their value a lot better, so keep an eye out for those. Now, as I promised earlier in the video, I wanted to shout out some cars that I do think will appreciate in years to come. The first one being the BMW M E46. Right now you can get them for around $20,000. However, they've basically bottomed out right there. Regardless of the miles, they've basically hit a floor there at $20,000, and I think they will start to appreciate. You've already seen it a little bit in the last year or so. The second one being the Mercedes-Benz 190E. This is one of my personal favorite cars of all time. I just think they are gorgeous. You can pick them up for just under $20,000 if you can get a good deal. The next one would be the 1965 Ford Mustang. You can pick these up for anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000. The next one is Toyota MR2 Mark 1. You can get them for about $10,000 right now, and I think that they're just a gorgeous car, very reliable. They have pop-up headlights, and overall just a really nice car. I have two more, and the second to last one is the Honda Integra Type R with the JDM, so it is going to be right-hand drive. You can get these for around $7,000 right now, and I do think that these will skyrocket in value. Last but definitely not least would be the Mitsubishi Lancer Evo 4, the JDM model with the right-hand drive. You can pick these up pretty cheap right now, but they are coveted in the JDM world, and I think that they will skyrocket since the Evo line has actually ended. Hopefully you learned something in this video, and if you did, apply it to your daily life and save thousands. If you made it this far in the video, I would really appreciate a like, comment for the YouTube algorithms, and subscribe to be up to date on the latest and greatest content. Thank you guys for watching, and see you guys in the next one.